Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirame Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the Divine Presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Mayeti Rudrayate Takshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So we'll resume our study with verse number 115 today. Abhavana va viparita bhavana sambhavana vipratipattirasyaha samsarga yuktam na vimunchanti dhruvam vikshepa shakti kshapayatyajasram. Whoever is affected by this veiling power is never freed from wrong thinking, contrary thinking, and confused or uncertain thinking. The projecting power always troubles such a person. So, in this causal body that we are studying, the discussion of Maya, we first saw that the three attributes of Maya are the three gunas. In the first part of this section, the qualities and the way Rajas manifests were described, and now we are doing the section on Tamas. In this context, two specific powers of Maya were also described. One is the veiling power. It's called in Sanskrit Avarana Shaktihi, that which hides. And the second is the projecting power called Vikshepa Shakti, that which projects. And we have seen that when a rope is mistaken for a snake, the power that hides the rope, the presence of the rope, and in place of that rope, a snake is projected. Now both, in order to mistake a rope for a snake, both these powers are in operation. The reality of the rope is hidden, and a phantom of a snake is created. Now, what is not hidden is the existence of the rope. The existence is not hidden. We know that there is some object there, but the identity of that object is hidden. And in that, on the place of the real identity, a kind of an imagined identity of a snake is projected. Now it's projected in such a way that when I look at the snake, I don't think that I'm imagining a snake. I'm actually seeing a snake. So what I'm actually seeing is the rope, but I feel that I'm seeing the snake. So both of these occurs by these two powers. And so the different kinds of problems or major obstacles that can occur in our spiritual journey are mentioned here. So just to connect the illustration with our own situation, just as the rope is mistaken for a snake, our divine being, our divine reality is then mistaken for a human identity. So just as the rope is hidden, our divine identity is hidden. And in its place, a human identity is projected. And just as the existence of the rope was not hidden, because we knew that there was something there, our own existence is also not hidden. That is why every one of us, we are absolutely sure that we exist. No one can, in their right mind, can ever say, I wonder if I exist. That doubt it never occurs. Or if it occurs, means there is something wrong with my brain, not with my assertion. And therefore, the three kinds of wrong thinking, or a thinking that can be problematic, are mentioned here. First is what is said there is abhavana, means wrong thinking. And wrong thinking would be when we read in these texts that the individual, the jiva and the infinite are one and the same. And one can say, no, they just cannot be the same. They are not one, they are different. The infinite is infinite, and I am this mortal little creature. So that's wrong thinking. And no matter how much the books may try to explain through logic and whatnot, but if this tamas is so strong that it will be not easy to get out of this wrong thinking. So that's called, in Sanskrit, abhavana. Or another way, abhavana can also mean absence, abhava, absence, can manifest is by saying there is no such thing as this infinite reality. So God deniers, people who believe that the material universe is all that exists, there is no such thing as God, are really affected by this kind of wrong thinking, which is a result of tamas. Second is contrary thinking. In Sanskrit, it is called viparita bhavana. A contrary thinking would be that even when we read or are told that our true nature is divine, we just say, no, my true nature is, this is who I am. I am a human being. My identity is connected with body and mind. So that would be something that is completely contrary to the experience of the enlightened ones and to what the scriptures say. And a third is called samshaya bhavana, meaning confused or uncertain thinking. And maybe many people fall into this category. They are not affirming anything, they are not denying anything, they're just saying, who knows whether it's true or false? We don't know. Or maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. In other words, not being able to make up our minds. And oftentimes we will see that when we think of these ultimate questions in life, our own thinking may fall into one of these categories. So what would be a right thinking? Right thinking doesn't necessarily mean that we have become enlightened all at once. Right thinking begins with an element of faith. The word for faith is shraddha. Not in the sense of, oh, this is true and I'm just going to accept it as true. Not in that sense. But with the idea that whatever I'm studying right now, even if it is completely contrary to my present experience, I'm at least willing to accept that it could be true. That the time and energy I'm investing in studying this text is a good investment because this could be true. So at least if we are able to accept whatever we are studying, at least as a working hypothesis, kind of reserving the final judgment when you actually experience it yourself. I think that would be a very healthy way to go about it. So no blindly following anything. At the same time, not being so cynical and skeptical as to not believe in anything at all. And both of these are problematic. It's also helpful to keep in mind that although this idea of faith often comes up and people feel hesitant, or how can I believe in something? It doesn't make sense to me. Or how can I believe in something which I have not experienced for myself? What we sometimes don't recognize that in our day-to-day life, faith plays a very important part. There are a lot of things we do every day just based on faith. When you drive your car, none of us are just engineers to know exactly how every part of the machinery works. We don't go and every day check whether every nut and bolt in that car is all right. We have the faith, my car has been working all right. If I sit and start and go, it will take me where I need to go. We sound a speed, we go 65, 70, 80 miles per hour. You're completely at the mercy of that machine, but there is this faith, although you have not directly personally gone and checked every part of it. When we fly, we have faith that whoever is flying that plane, the pilot, will do their job well. When you go to a restaurant, you're not personally gone and seen what ingredients are put in the food that is kept before you. We have faith that this is something edible, this is something I will like. So it's good to keep this in mind, because sometimes the word faith, invariably people think, oh, that's just a matter of religion. And the rest of my life is like, I'm completely rational, I check everything to the point. It's not so. And so if we can do so many other things in our daily life with faith, then to have this kind of an hesitation, to have faith in what the book is saying, doesn't seem very logical to me. And Vedanta itself is very specific. It says the ultimate test of truth is that you experience it for yourself. Not just because some book says it, but at least I need to know what I need to do to get that experience. That's the idea. So these three, wrong thinking, contrary thinking, and confused thinking, never leave a person who is affected by this veiling power. And it is to such people that this projecting power always troubles them. And that's the story of our life. When we mistake one thing for another, and you're not just seeing, even thinking in a wrong way, all of this occurs because of these two powers which are functioning every moment of our life. Next verse. 116. Ajnanamalasya jadatva nidra pramada mudhatva mukhastamo gunaha etai prayukto nahi vetti kinchit nidraluvat stambhavat eva tishtati. Ignorance, laziness, dullness, sleep, unmindfulness, and stupidity are among the attributes of tamas. A person endowed with these qualities does not know anything and remains like one asleep or like a pillar. So if we have any time, any doubt whether there is any tamas in us or not, we have a fairly good list here. Now by sleep here is, of course, we might say, well, every one of us sleeps at night. And so, although sometimes we think of tamas as like something bad, there are different ways of looking at these three gunas, because I know, and you know, that sattva is considered like an ideal guna that all of us must try to cultivate. And in comparison, we always see that rajas and tamas are like the bad guys. But we have to be balanced in these matters. We have to recognize that both tamas and rajas, in spite of some of these attributes which do not look that good on paper, they do have a certain important role to perform. We know that sleep is essential for us to survive, for us to remain relatively sane people. If someone doesn't sleep for an indefinite period, they'll go mad, they'll go crazy. And so sleep is essential. On the other hand, there is a limit to how much we should sleep. If someone is sleeping 18 hours a day, day after day, then there is a problem. So similarly with activity, rajas, which is that promotes activity. Every one of us has to be active, physically active, even for physical health, mentally active for the health of the mind. And also if that activity is used to take me closer to my spiritual ideal, that kind of rajas is actually helpful. Because even in order to pray, to worship, to meditate, to study, that's activity. We need rajas for those things. So I don't want you to hold on to the idea as if rajas and tamas are bad, because they do perform some useful function. But beyond that certain level of usefulness that they have, if they go beyond that, then they can also manifest in ways that can be destructive, ways that can hurt our spiritual progress. So ignorance, laziness, dullness, sleep, and all of this should be understood from that point of view. A person endowed with these qualities does not know anything. So anything that holds us down, and that's why the example of remains like one asleep or like a pillar, means that in that state of tamas, when tamas dominates, we are incapable of taking or initiating any activity. In order to initiate activity, we need rajas. In order to rest, we need tamas. So both have important roles to perform. Next, we now look at sattva, verse 117. Sattvam vishuddham jalavat tathapi tabhyam militva saranaya kalpate yatratma bimbah pratibimbitas san prakashayati arka ivakhilam jadam. Although sattva is pure like clear water, it combines with rajas and tamas to generate this universe. The Atman is reflected in sattva and like the sun illumines the entire material universe. So in order for the world or the universe to arise, the universe in which we live, move, and pass all of our lives, for that universe to be what it is, we need all the three gunas. So sattva by itself is pure. But pure is meant is uncontaminated. So when we speak about pure gold, what pure gold would mean that whatever objects are made out of that gold, there is no other metal mixed into it. So pure sattva would mean sattva unmixed with rajas or tamas. So in its own nature, when it is just by itself, it is just pure, clear, like clear water. But it does combine, or seems to combine, with rajas and tamas, and the three together are the kind of the basic ingredients of the world in which we live. And that's why in the world we see there is activity, there is rest, and then there is also, as it says, it illumines the entire material universe. What does illumining the universe mean? It simply means it makes the universe knowable. It makes the universe an object of my consciousness. So when there is light, we are able to see things and know them and understand them. So when we are able to see anything, when my senses are able to grasp anything, whether it is sight, sound, touch, smell, all of these sensations, the awareness that is generated for this sensation becomes possible because of this pure sattva. Verse 118. Mishrasya sattvasya bhavanti dharmaha tvamanitadya niyamayamadyaha shraddha cha bhaktischa mumukshutta cha daivi cha sampattir asannivrittihi. The qualities of mixed sattva, by mixed in the sense, mixed with rajas and tamas, are absence of pride, etc. See Gita 13 chapters 7 to 11. Niyama, yama, faith, devotion, longing for freedom, the divine attributes, again 16 chapter of the Gita, and withdrawal from the unreal. So we won't go into this detailed list. You don't have to, but I would encourage you, when you go home today or whenever you have time in the coming week, please look up these two references. 13th chapter of the Gita, 7 to 11, and 16th chapter of the Gita, 1 to 2. You will find there the qualities mentioned. They are all the qualities in which way the sattva manifests. And some of them are mentioned here, of course, as Shraddha, Bhakti, Bhakti is devotion, Mumukshutta, longing for freedom, and Daivi Sampattihi, and Asat Nivrittihi. So take a look at these, all of these qualities. As you see in the note in the book, Niyama and Yama are two categories here adopted from the Yoga Sutras. Niyama includes cleanliness, contentment, austerity, study, and worship of God. Yama includes non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, chastity, and non-receiving of gifts. In short, every quality which can be a great help to us in our spiritual path belongs to sattva. That's the summary of this. Verse 119. Vishuddha sattvasya guna prasadaha swatmanubhuti parama prashantihi tripti praharsha paramatmanistha yaya sadananda rasam samricchati. So while the earlier verse spoke about mixed sattva, sattva in company of the other two attributes, but what are the qualities of sattva itself, by itself? So the qualities of pure sattva are cheerfulness, self-realization, supreme peace, contentment, bliss, supreme devotion to the Atman, by which eternal bliss is attained. One other thing you can keep in mind, when we speak about qualities of mixed sattva, sometimes the commentators say mixed sattva can be understood either as sattva mixed with tamas and rajas, but there is also a view that sattva and tamas don't really go together. Because one is light and tamas is seen as a symbol of darkness. Tamas is sleep, while sattva is being awake. So some commentators have said by mixed sattva is meant A sattva with a tinge of rajas attached to it, but absence of tamas. Again, these are two different ways of understanding what mixed sattva means. That's why it's interesting to know that when the quality of our meditation improves, the need for physical sleep becomes less. Just the physical sleep is just tamas, that's it. The mind, the dreaming that we do at night, the mind still has this rajas. That's why the mind is active and projects the dreams. And the body is just filled with tamas. And I mentioned this before, that sometimes we might sleep for hours together and yet may not feel fully rested when we wake up in the morning. So it's not just how long, how many hours I'm lying in my bed, but if most of my night I have been dreaming, then because the mind is jumping in dream, it's still very active, I don't feel rested in the morning. So presently, the best rest each of us gets is during those periods of night when we are not even dreaming. And that's what is called often as deep sleep, sushupti. That's the time mind is almost quiet, the body is quiet, and we get rest. Now, it's possible to get even more rest, a deeper rest even than that, but that occurs through a good meditation. Remember, sometimes when we are trying to meditate, it's so difficult to even physically sit without movement, because the rajas is so much that it manifests even through the movement of the body. And of course, the difficulties many of us have in making the mind still, keeping the mind focused on our ishta, on the ideal. It's also because of the overactive rajas in the mind. That rajas is so strong, the mind just doesn't remain still, focused on one object. The mind just jumps from this idea, that idea, what happened yesterday, what's going to happen tomorrow. So, rajas can be an obstacle to meditation. Tamas can be an obstacle to meditation too, because sometimes when people who try to meditate, they just fall asleep. And so that's overpower of tamas during meditation can just result in sleep. And therefore, sattva is just seen as that kind of a balance, that state of calmness, that state of light, alertness that will keep us on the path. So verse 119. Vishuddha sattvasya guna prasadaha svatmanubhutif parama prashantihi tripti praharsha paramatmanistha yaya sadananda rasam samricchati. The qualities of pure sattva are cheerfulness, self-realization, supreme peace, contentment, bliss, supreme devotion to the Atman, by which eternal bliss is attained. So one question that can come is, well, these are the qualities of pure sattva, and I have to now hope or try to get this pure sattva in order to experience these qualities in myself. which is true. But also, oftentimes the qualities, such qualities when they are mentioned in texts, they also become the practices. So, as in the Gita also, several places, Shankaracharya in his commentary mentions, for instance, in the second chapter, where the person of steady wisdom, sthita prajna, one who is enlightened, their qualities are mentioned. What the commentator says is that the characteristics of the enlightened become the practices of the unenlightened. So we can apply the same principle here, that if these are the qualities of pure sattva, rather than just keep on waiting, oh, when will these qualities come in me and then I will know that I have pure sattva, what we can do is to recognize that for people in whom this pure sattva has already arisen, these qualities will manifest in their life naturally, spontaneously, effortlessly. But for those of us who are on the path, we have to try to cultivate the same qualities, but obviously we are going to need a lot of effort. Obviously, we are going to fail a number of times. That's fine. But I need to, so cheerfulness. Yes, there are times in our life when we are cheerful, but there are also times when we are not cheerful. So when the situation is such that makes cheerfulness effortless, and that's wonderful. But what do we do when there are other times in our life there is no particular reason to be cheerful, or maybe situation is such that being cheerful is difficult? Now in such times, in such situations, can I still summon up my own willpower, summon up my way of looking at things in such positive way that I can try to keep myself cheerful no matter what the external circumstances are? And as I said, sometimes in some situation it's going to be difficult. But if I can manage to do that, I have gone one step closer to manifesting this pure sattva in my heart. Supreme peace. Can I try to hold my peace no matter how crazy the situation may be outside? Now this sometimes people might mistake it like, will I not be affected by what's happening outside me? Of course I'll be affected. But can I find a way to protect myself from being influenced by everything that is happening outside, so that I'll be able to do what I want to do, what I need to do? In winter, there's extreme cold outside. We don't say, oh, I don't need to protect myself. We do. We protect ourselves. We either wear some warm clothing or we remain in an enclosure, there is heating, so that we are protected from external things. So just as we try to protect ourselves from heat, cold, and rain and snow, if that's okay, then why isn't it okay to protect ourselves from negative, destructive, harmful thoughts and feelings that are outside? The benefit in protecting ourselves that way is, if I can protect myself, then my ability to help others also increases. That's why the example that I always like and like to repeat it often is that when we are flying, they say that the air pressure goes down, the oxygen masks will come down from above, and then they say, first put the mask on yourself, and then if necessary, help the person or the child or whoever next to you. So even if we want to help others, we must first have the ability to help ourselves. If I cannot protect myself, how am I going to protect anybody else. If I cannot swim, how can I help another drowning person? And therefore, cultivating these qualities, however selfish it might look, like, well, the world is suffering and I'm not trying to be cheerful and contented. It just seems, if you don't think about it deeply, it just seems like I'm just too much preoccupied with myself. But why? Because if I'm peaceful, if I'm contented, if I'm cheerful, then whenever there is a problem, in that state of calmness and cheerfulness, I have a better chance of finding the right solution to help myself or to help others. Because the problems will and can occur in any number of ways in our lives. And we have seen that if we are overwhelmed by any problem, if we are excited, if we are nervous, if we are depressed, then it's very difficult to solve a problem. So being calm is very important. So all of these qualities mentioned here are qualities that we can consciously try to cultivate in order to manifest that pure sattva inside our hearts. Because through all of this, the eternal bliss, which is what the ultimate goal is, will be attained. This eternal bliss does not come by going to a certain place. And that's oftentimes in religious literature. We think about some place, the heaven or the kingdom of God. These are the different ways in different religious traditions. In Sanskrit, they speak about Swarga. It's some kind of a heavenly celestial place. So this eternal bliss, if there is a place like heaven, and there is no reason to doubt it, if this place exists, then some other place can also exist. But will that bliss be eternal? And what Vedantic thinkers have said, that if it is a place, if it is something within the domain of space, time, and causality, then no matter how wonderful it might be, it's still going to be limited. Maybe it could be longer than a human span of life. Maybe we live here, give and take 100 years. Maybe in some celestial world, wherever we go, if there is a heaven, we might maybe live there a few thousand years, a few million years. But still, that's not eternal. That's going to end someday. And when it ends, we have to come back. And sometimes you see, heaven can be a place of, can lead to profound misery, even with our present understanding of heaven. Because think about someone who has lived for 1,000,000 years in heaven and have gotten so used to that place and said, okay, now your lease is over, go back, become a human being again. That would be a profound misery, because you have lived in all these great comforts in heaven for such a long time, and now you have to readjust yourself to this miserable existence of 100 years of a human life. And there could be some joy in heaven also, a hell for that matter. If someone has lived for 1,000,000 years in hell, and someone said, okay, your lease in hell is over now, go and be born again. We don't know whether this place is any better than hell right now, but either way. So the idea, I just wanted to kind of emphasize the idea of eternal bliss. If something is eternal, it is not bound by time, it is not bound by space, and it is not within the realm of causality. Because if it is within cause and effect, then the cause is limited, the effect will also be limited. So anything that is beyond time, space, and causality alone can be eternal. I think I will stop here today so that we'll have some time for discussion. So next time we can begin with 120. Yeah. Have any comments, questions, ideas?
Maharaj, the senses that we have, are they caused by Sattva?
Are they caused by?
The senses, the five senses human being have, are they caused by Sattva?
Okay, good. Very good question. Yeah, please sit down. So we have two sets of senses. One is called senses of action, called karmendriya, and senses of knowledge, jnanendriya. So jnanendriyas are made up of the sattva part of these primal elements. So there are 5 primal elements: space, air, light or fire, water and earth. Again, these are the terms that are given. Don't identify with the space and air that we see now. It just means the first material evolutes that come from Maya. So, and because they are material, because they are part of matter, and they are all products of Maya, and we saw that Maya has all these 3 attributes, all of these attributes are present in every one of these. So the senses of knowledge that we have are made up of the sattva part of these primal elements. The karmendriyas, the senses of action, they are made up of the rajas part of the elements. So there are both. Yeah. Good you brought it up, because this is something helpful to know. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Swamiji, you mentioned that body is like tamasic, mind is rajasic. Body is tamasic.
When it is asleep.
When we're asleep. And mind is rajasic.
When it is dreaming.
When I'm dreaming. So even when I'm dreaming or I'm sleeping, I have no other tools other than body and mind to experience sattvika. So how do I do this?
No, the mind is still there, and the Atman is there, of course. So the ultimate experiencer is the Atman through the instrumentality of the body and mind. And yes, of course, when I'm asleep, when I'm not even conscious of the body, then the body doesn't do anything. So then the Atman functions through the instrumentality of the mind. So when the mind falls asleep, then the Atman only has Maya or ignorance around it. And so that time the Atman doesn't experience anything outside. It just experiences itself. And that bliss that we experience is the bliss of the Atman, because there is no world there. So the experience comes from the Atman through these instruments, the body and mind.
So Atman is experiencing?
Through the instruments of body and mind. Atman by itself cannot experience. The instrument by themselves cannot experience. Only when they come together, then experience is possible. Yeah. Yep.
Swamiji, my question might be slightly not well framed, Swamiji, but I'll try to explain what I think you mentioned that there has to be a balance between these 3 gunas. They cannot be, how do I say this? Is there a sattvic tamas or a sattvic rajas is there a way to qualify?
Good question. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says when he says that those traits of our personality which can be seen as obstacles to our spiritual progress, if we can rechannelize them, redirect them in the direction of God, in the direction of the spiritual ideal, then those things which are obstacles can in fact become great help. For instance, now, desire. Now, desire often gets demonized in religion. It's like desire is what disturbs my mind and takes me away from God. Now, what Sri Ramakrishna said is, can I now, instead of desiring the perishable things of this material world, can I change the direction of the desire and start desiring the divine being? Or if I'm angry, rather than being angry at other people or things outside, can I be just angry with myself for not doing enough the things that I should do, the things that I can do? Greed, instead of being greedy again for all material things, can I be greedy to experience more and more of the spiritual ideal, or experience more and more the love of God, the wisdom of God? So it's possible to turn these directions. Exactly in the same way, tamas and rajas also, if I can act, for instance, rajas is activity. So can I now use this force, this active force, to do things which will bring me greater knowledge rather than immerse me in a greater bondage and ignorance? Similarly, tamas, even if I can just remain still in meditation, without activity, without movement, that's good. So it's possible to just, how we look at it and how we turn the direction. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Anything else? Are there any questions online? Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
So the first question is, how can one use contentment progressively, that is, without letting it stifle growth?
Without letting it?
Stifle growth.
Well, I don't know why contentment should stifle growth. Contentment doesn't mean that I shouldn't strive for something more. Contentment means to be happy with what I have, but if there is a way to excel, to grow in some ways, striving for growth is not, doesn't necessarily have to come from a place of discontentment, that I need to grow because I'm terribly unhappy now. I can say, I can make myself happy with what I have, but I can strive for more. So, and I think that striving for more from a place of a contented mind, that striving will be more effective, I believe, than someone who is just angry and frustrated and disappointed. Because I think these negative qualities kind of do somehow they don't allow our full potential to manifest. They kind of hold us down. So a state of contentment is very helpful. And a devotee can think in this way, that I'm going to do my best, I'm going to strive, but ultimately what will come to me is what I deserve, or what God feels is good for me. So a devotee would say, I'm contented with what I have, recognizing that it's the will of the divine. But when I strive for something more, that striving also comes through the will of the divine. So that's how a devotee will look at it. Yeah.
So the other question is, replacing bad thoughts with good one can work in one time but does not remove mental impressions completely, and they can pop up again after some other time? Question mark.
Yes, but trying to replace self-destructive thinking with positive thinking, it may not change everything overnight, but it is a step in the right direction. Because if destructive thinking can create destructive mental impressions, samskaras in the mind, then my consciously using my willpower, thinking positive thoughts, I'm generating positive mental impressions in the mind. So essentially, at present, our mind has both positive impressions, negative impressions. And depending on the proportions of these, there is no way to know which of these impressions will be stimulated by some external or internal trigger and will arise in the mind. The only thing that we can say is that if I have more and more of positive impressions in my mind, the probability of a positive thinking coming up is more than a negative thinking. So what we are consciously trying to do is generating more good positive mental impressions, and that can come only through good positive thinking, good positive ways of collecting this impression. That's why oftentimes from childhood we have been told by elders in our family, have good friends, read good books, have good habits, because all of these ways are a way of filling our mind with something positive, healthy impressions. And then even if a few negative, unhealthy impressions come, the demographic of my mind would have more positive things and less negative things. And therefore, the probability of more positive desires and thoughts coming up is increased. So that's within. It's not, ultimately, yes. Ultimately, we have to get rid of these negative impressions. And that's something that needs to be done slowly, eventually. But what any of us can do right now, that's within the reach of every one of us, is to consciously choose positive, healthy ways of thinking, speaking, doing, working. Everything that we do, can I somehow make it positive and healthy? And one simple rule, which I have found very beneficial, and I'm sure many of you may have thought about this, and it's the rule that Swami Vivekananda gave. What he said was simply this: whenever we have to make any choices in life, or make any decisions in life, one simple rule of thumb would be to say, will choosing this, or deciding this course of action, or thinking in this way, will it make me strong, or will it make me weak? And that strength can come in any number of ways, at the level of the body, the mind, the mental, emotional, intellectual, spiritual level. So if anything at any of these levels would somehow make me stronger, then that would be a good choice. But if it's going to somehow make me weak or compromise my integrity in some way, then that's not good for me. So this is at least very helpful, because all of us are called upon to make many choices, take decisions in life. And sometimes it can be a great dilemma. Should I choose this or should I choose that? And we must have some rule of thumb in our mind, something that will help us make the right decisions in life. So we'll stop here today. And next time we will begin with verse 120. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. So day after tomorrow, according to the lunar calendar, is a birthday of Sri Shankaracharya. And in order to remember the great contribution that Shankara made, the book that we are studying is written by him. So on Sunday, a topic will be lessons from his life and his teachings. So some of the things that we learn from Shankara, we'll try to reflect a little bit on that on Sunday. And next Wednesday, we will continue with this study. And Saturday, we'll have our meditation as usual. So let's conclude with the prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.